Imagine waking up on a Saturday morning, grabbing your coffee and scrolling through your phone only to find out your country is at war. That's exactly what happened to millions of Americans just a few days ago. While most people were sleeping, President Trump launched a massive military attack against Iran. And here's the thing that might surprise you. The White House didn't even give a real speech explaining why. Just a short video on Truth Social in the middle of the night. So the big question everyone's asking now, the question we're going to dig deep into today on The Lost Economy Now, is simple. Do Americans actually support this attack? Because the numbers coming in right now are telling a very different story than what you might expect from a president who promised to end endless wars. Before we get into the details, here's the deal. We put hours into researching this for you. And if you want to understand what's really happening with American public opinion, you need to hit that like button right now and subscribe to The Lost Economy Now. We break down complex news into simple conversations. We don't want you to miss what comes next in this rapidly unfolding situation. Trust me, the next few weeks are going to change everything. So let's start with the poll numbers because they're pretty shocking. According to a Reuters Ipsos poll conducted right after the strikes began, only about 1 in 4 Americans actually support this attack. We're talking 27%. That's it. 43% of Americans said they flat out do not support it. And another 29% aren't even sure what to think yet. Now think about that for a second. When a president takes the country to war, you'd expect more people to be on board, right? But here's the thing that really jumps out. 56% of Americans believe Trump is too willing to use military force. That's not just Democrats saying that. 23% of Republicans agree with that statement too. Even within his own party, a quarter of his supporters are looking at these strikes and wondering if this is the right path. And this isn't just some random poll. This was a nationwide survey of over 1,200 adults, and it has a margin of error of only 3 percentage points. That means these numbers are real. This is actually how Americans feel. Now you might be wondering, why are the numbers so low? Well, part of it comes down to what Trump promised when he was campaigning. He ran on an America First platform. He said he would stop the endless wars. He said he would bring our troops home. And now, just over a year into his second term, we're looking at a major conflict with Iran that analysts are already calling his biggest foreign policy gamble yet. Here's something, the lost economy. Now I want you to really understand, this attack wasn't just a small strike. The US and Israel launched what they're calling Operation Epic Fury. In just 36 hours, they carried out hundreds of airstrikes. We're talking over 700 flight missions and more than 2,000 bombs dropped on Iranian targets. And the biggest news of all, Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei was killed in the attack. Now, regardless of how you feel about Iran's leadership, killing the head of another country is a massive deal. It changes everything. And the administration's goal seems to be nothing less than regime change in Tehran. But here's the problem. The American people weren't asking for this. In fact, just a week before the attack, an AP NORC poll showed that only about 3 in 10 Americans have confidence in Trump's judgment when it comes to using military force. Think about that. Only 30% trust him to make the right call, and 61% of Americans see Iran as an enemy of the United States. So it's not that people like Iran, it's that they don't trust that this war is the answer. Let me share something from Daniel Shapiro, who used to be a senior Pentagon official. He said most Americans are going to wake up and wonder why we're at war with Iran, what the goal is, and why US bases in the Middle East are now under attack. And that's exactly what's happening right now. Iran has already launched missiles at Israel and at Gulf countries where American bases are located. They've also closed the Strait of Hormuz, which is one of the most important oil routes in the entire world. So this isn't a distant conflict that won't affect regular people. This is going to hit home. And that brings us to the economy, because you know the lost economy. Now always keeps it real about money. 45% of Americans say they will be less likely to support this military action if it causes gas or oil prices to go up. And guess what? Analysts are already predicting oil could hit $100 a barrel. That means higher prices at the pump for everyone. It means more expensive groceries, because transportation costs go up. It means inflation could get worse right when people are already struggling with the cost of living. And remember, polls consistently show that voters care way more about the economy than about foreign policy. So this is a huge risk for Trump politically. Here's what's really interesting, though. The attack did get support from most Republicans. About 55% said they approve. But even among them, there are conditions. 42% of Republicans said they would be less likely to support the campaign if it leads to American troops being killed or injured. And unfortunately, that's already happened. The U.S. military has now confirmed that 3 American service members have been killed and 5 more seriously wounded in this operation. So that condition has already been met. And that's going to change how people feel as the days go on. So right now, the picture is clear. Americans are divided. They're uncertain. and a lot of them are worried about where this is heading. In the next part, we're going to break down why Trump decided to do this now, what his administration is actually trying to achieve, and whether this gamble could pay off or blow up in his face. You don't want to miss it. Make sure you're subscribed to The Lost Economy now so you get the next part as soon as it drops. And drop a comment down below telling us where you stand. Do you support this attack or not? We want to hear from you. If you're just joining us, we're breaking down the big question on everyone's mind. Do Americans really support Trump's attack on Iran? In part 1, we looked at the poll numbers showing only 27% approval and the growing concern among Americans that this president is too quick to use military force. But here's what we didn't get to yet: the why. Why now? What is Trump actually trying to accomplish? And is there any scenario where the American public gets behind this? Let's start by going back to what Trump said during his State of the Union address just last week. He told the American people, quote, "We're in negotiations with them. They want to make a deal." He was talking about Iran. He said they haven't said the magic words yet about never getting a nuclear weapon, but talks were happening. There was a round of nuclear talks in Geneva just last Thursday. They didn't achieve a breakthrough, but they were talking. So the shift from negotiations to all-out airstrikes happened fast, really fast. And here's something that might surprise you. Some of Trump's own advisors had been privately urging him for weeks to focus more on the economy and less on foreign policy. They knew that voters care more about their wallets than about what's happening in the Middle East. They warned him about the political dangers heading into the midterm elections. But Trump went the other way. He went big. He went with force. Now the official reason the White House is giving for the attack is that Iran posed a ballistic missile threat to the United States. But here's the thing. According to sources familiar with intelligence assessments, that claim is not actually backed up by U.S. intelligence reports. Experts say Iran's missiles don't pose a direct threat to the U.S. homeland, so right away you have a credibility gap. People are asking, is this really about protecting America, or is it about something else? Most analysts believe the something else is regime change. Trump has made it clear he wants to topple the Iranian government, and killing the supreme leader is about as direct a move toward that goal as you can get. But here's the big question. Can you change a government from the air? John Alterman from the Center for Strategic and International Studies put it this way. He said, quote, "It's hard to change the government from the air. It's hard to change the minds of Iranians through the air." And he's right. History shows that air power alone rarely creates popular uprisings. Without troops on the ground, without a real strategy for what comes next, you're just blowing things up and hoping for the best. And that's what has a lot of Americans nervous, because even if you remove Khamenei, what comes next? Iran is a country of 93 million people, with a deeply entrenched system of clerical rule and a powerful revolutionary guard. Analysts warn that eliminating the top leaders could actually backfire. It could create chaos, or it could lead to an even more hardline military government that's more oppressive to its own people and more hostile to the West. So the question becomes, did we just make things worse? Now let's talk about the Republican reaction, because it's not as simple as party lines. 55% of Republicans support the strikes. That's a majority, but it's not overwhelming. And remember, we already talked about how 42% of Republicans say they oppose the action if it leads to American casualties. Well, we now have casualties. 3 Americans are dead, 5 are seriously wounded. That changes the calculus. Suddenly this isn't a video game or a movie. These are real families getting notified that their loved ones aren't coming home. And there's another factor that's going to shape public opinion: the economy. We touched on this in part 1, but let's dig deeper. The Strait of Hormuz is closed. That's a big deal. About 20% of the world's oil passes through that strait. When it closes, prices go up. We're already seeing oil traders predict prices could hit $100 a barrel. For context, oil was trading much lower just last week. And that means at the pump, you could be looking at $4, $5, even $6 a gallon, depending on where you live. And when gas goes up, everything goes up. Food, shipping, travel. Your monthly budget gets squeezed. And here's the thing, the lost economy. Now I want you to really think about 45% of Americans said they'd be less likely to support the Iran action if gas prices go up. That includes 34% of Republicans and 44% of independents. So the moment people feel this in their wallets, support could drop even further. And we're already starting from a pretty low base. There's also a generational divide here that's interesting. Younger Americans under 45 are much less likely to see Iran as an enemy compared to older Americans. Only about half of younger adults call Iran an enemy, compared to about 7 in 10 older adults. And younger Americans are also less concerned about Iran's nuclear program. So when you look at the demographic trends, the support for this war is going to be heavily concentrated among older, more conservative voters. Younger people? Not so much. Now let's talk about the international reaction, because that also affects how Americans feel. This isn't just a US-Iran conflict. Israel is deeply involved. In fact, the Israeli military says they've already killed not just Khamenei, but also top leaders from Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis. They're claiming they've eliminated the entire leadership structure of Iran and its proxies. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu says they are going to hit Tehran's core, and they are going to keep escalating until the Iranian regime is completely defeated. So this is expanding. It's not staying contained. And other countries are getting pulled in too. Iran has launched missiles at Gulf states. There have been deaths in Iraq, in the UAE, in Kuwait. This is becoming a regional war. And when wars expand, they cost more money, they take more lives, and they become harder to end. That's exactly what Americans were told wouldn't happen under Trump's leadership. So where does that leave us? In part 3, we're going to look ahead. What happens next? How are lawmakers in Washington responding? And what does this mean for Trump's political future and for the midterm elections? We're also going to talk about what you can do to stay informed and make your voice heard. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the final part. And while you're at it, share this video with someone who needs to understand what's really happening. The mainstream media won't always break it down this simply, but here at The Lost Economy Now, we keep it real. We've covered the poll numbers showing only 27% of Americans support Trump's attack on Iran. And we've talked about the 56% who think the president is too quick to use military force. We've broken down the economic risks and the regional escalation. Now it's time to answer the big question: what happens next? And more importantly, what does this mean for you? Let's start in Washington, because things are getting heated. Democratic Senator Chris Van Hollen put it bluntly. He said, quote, "Trump said he would keep us out of war. This is his war of choice." And that message is going to be front and center as we head into the midterm elections. Democrats are already planning to make this a key issue. They're going to argue that Trump broke his promise, that he got us into another Middle East conflict when he said he would get us out. And for voters who are already struggling with the cost of living, this is going to resonate. There's also a war powers resolution being introduced in Congress. This would require Trump to get approval from lawmakers before taking further military action. Now, will it pass? That's unclear. Republicans control Congress, and so far, most of them have stuck with the president. But as casualties mount, and as the economic pain hits home, that could change. Remember, 42% of Republicans already said they'd turn against the war if American troops got killed. Well, that's happened. So the pressure is going to build. And let's talk about those troops for a moment. 3 Americans are dead. 5 are seriously wounded. These are real people, with families, with friends, with communities. And every time another casualty is announced, the war becomes more real for more Americans. Doug Bando from the Cato Institute said it perfectly. He said, quote, "The fact that Americans have died suddenly shows this is not just a video game from the standpoint of America." And he's right. When it's just news footage of explosions far away, it's easy to stay detached. But when you see the flag-draped coffins, when you hear the names, when you realize these are someone's children, it changes everything. Now let's look at Trump's overall approval rating. It's at 39% right now, down 1 point from just a week ago. That might not sound like a huge drop, but in politics, trends matter. If this war drags on, if gas prices keep climbing, if more Americans come home in body bags, that number is going to keep falling, and the midterms are just months away. Republicans are at risk of losing one or both chambers of Congress. This war could be the thing that tips the balance. There's also the question of whether this strategy can actually work. Trump seems to believe that bombing Iran will bring them back to the negotiating table, that if he hits them hard enough, they'll be forced to make deep concessions. But so far, that's not what's happening. Iran is hitting back. They're closing oil routes, they're launching missiles, they're showing that they won't just fold. And history tells us that regimes don't usually collapse just from airstrikes. It takes more than that. It takes a ground strategy, it takes a political plan, it takes allies on the ground. And the US doesn't have any of that in Iran right now. So what does this mean for the average American watching this video? It means a few things. First, expect higher prices. Oil at $100 a barrel is going to hit your wallet. If you drive, you're going to feel it at the pump. If you buy groceries, you're going to see it in the prices. If you have a business that ships products, your costs are going up. This isn't abstract. This is real money. Second, expect more news about the war. This isn't going away anytime soon. The administration says the mission will continue until all objectives are achieved. Trump himself said, quote, "There will likely be more before it ends." That means more strikes, more casualties, more escalation. This is going to dominate the news cycle for weeks and months to come. Third, expect the political debate to get louder. You're going to hear a lot about whether this war was justified. You're going to hear from both sides, and you're going to have to decide for yourself where you stand. That's why channels like The Lost Economy Now are so important. We're not here to tell you what to think. We're here to give you the facts so you can make up your own mind. Now, before we wrap up, I want to leave you with something to think about. The poll we've been referencing throughout this video was taken right after the strikes began, before American casualties were announced, before oil prices really started to spike. So those numbers, 27% support, 56% think Trump is too quick to use force, those are actually the best case numbers for the administration. They're likely to get worse, not better, as the reality of war sets in. And here's the final question. What do you think? We've been talking about what Americans think, but we haven't heard from you. Drop a comment below and let us know. Do you support this attack? Why or why not? Are you worried about where this is heading? Do you think Trump made the right call, or do you think this is a mistake? We rate every comment, and we want this to be a real conversation. The Lost Economy Now is about building a community of people who want to understand what's really going on in the world, and your voice matters. Also, if you found this video helpful, do me a favor. Share it with one person who needs to see it. Send it to a friend, post it on your social media, put it in a group chat. The more people who understand what's really happening with American public opinion on this war, the better conversations we can all have. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We're going to be following this story every step of the way, and you don't want to miss what comes next. Thanks for watching The Lost Economy Now. We'll see you in the next video. Until then, stay informed, stay engaged, and take care of yourselves. This is a serious moment for the country, and we all need to pay attention.